What would you do if the person you love became someone else? Author Daniel Shapiro was forced to answer that question when his wife suffered 2 brain bleeds that caused severe mental and physical decline. He spent 15 years caring for his wife and their 3 young kids. Now he's sharing their story in his book, The Thin Ledge. I want to thank you for joining us very much, Daniel Shapiro. This is a timely talk. November is National Caregivers Month. You've been frank and candid about this. What was the biggest shock to you when you began caring for your wife?
Well, how difficult it was. First, let me say thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, and I hope the message that I try to get out from the book is helpful to people. To answer your question, it was just very hard. It's unusual to be caring for somebody in any circumstance, as an adult in particular, and a long-term illness with all sorts of impairments is particularly challenging, I think.
With so many of the stories of caregivers in our country, the vast majority, the caregivers are women. It is just part of the way our society has worked over the years. But 31% of men do end up in that role. So it's a little more unique journey. What was different, do you think, for you as opposed to women in that role?
You know, it's an interesting question, and it's come up before as I'm having these conversations. And I have to say, I don't really think it's a gender issue. I think this is one of those things that is purely human across the board. I don't know that there would be a difference between the difficulty and the loss, the pain that you deal with, the responsibility that you have between a man and a woman. It seems to me the gender sort of drops out on this one. I've always thought that.
It can be overwhelming to be a caregiver. I've found through other interviews that just finding support, physical, mental, emotional, some respite care is critical. Where did you find support, and how important was that for you?
Well, very important. And I found my kids who were little when this all began, but as they grew up, they were supportive throughout. I had a network of friends, family. They were all very supportive. And frankly, I wrote the book because I didn't find very much outside of my own personal network to help me understand what I was experiencing, and particularly to explain to me that what I was experiencing wasn't really unique, that the questions that I had, the difficulties I was struggling with, the reasons that I was, sort of having a very hard time, were things that other people had experienced, but there's not a lot out there, I've found, that sort of bluntly and plainly addresses that, puts it on the table. And part of the value of sharing the story is that you let people who are similarly challenged and situated know that they're not doing this all for the first time in the history of mankind.
Yeah.
That these things, these issues and these questions have come up before. And that is, I think, some help. I think that gives people some support. Knowing
that you're not alone. We're out of time, but I do want to ask you very quickly. The book's The Thin Ledge, a lot more in that. But if you have to tell people one thing about being a caregiver, just quickly, what would that be?
Well, give yourself a little bit of a break to the extent that you can. Give yourself some latitude and some leeway. It's a very difficult challenge that you're confronting. And I found that I had days where I just wasn't very good at it, and you have to be able to sort of get up the next day and give it another go without punishing yourself. I would say that's probably the biggest lesson that I would want to pass along.
Incredibly important topic. Daniel Shapiro, I want to thank you for your time and for your book, The Thin Ledge. You're going to tell our viewers to go out and check that out, especially if they're finding themselves in the situation of being a caregiver.
Thanks so much.